Okay, well, welcome, Auntie Ku. So everyone, today we're speaking with Dr. Ku Kahakalau, or Auntie Ku, a longtime Native Hawaiian educator who is fiercely committed to the revitalization of Hawaiian language, culture, and traditions, and whose place-based model of Native Hawaiian education has been transformative in Hawaii and beyond. We're so grateful to have you here to share your knowledge and experience with us as an Indigenous educator. It's hard for me to know where to start with the brilliance and depth of your work, so I think we'll just start with, can you please introduce yourself to our community and share a little bit about who you are and where you come from?
Ai, aloha mai kākou, o wau o kuhinahina kui kahakai kahakalau, o Honolulu ku'u o Nehanau, o Hawaii ku'u Mokupuni a o Waipio ku'u Awawa. Greetings, my name is Ku, Auntie Ku, Kahakalau, and I was born in Honolulu, but my island is Hawaii Island, and my valley is Waipio Valley. I am an educator, love it. Didn't think I would ever be one, but I ended up falling into this field and have had the distinct pleasure of working with so many wonderful, wonderful Native Hawaiian students over 35 years, and really have been blessed to help them along on their journey.
Thank you. Thank you. So, our goal with this interview series is to invite Indigenous educators from different places and different stages in their career to share their journey into becoming an Indigenous educator, Native Hawaiian educator. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a Native Hawaiian educator and how that informs what you do and what you believe is important about teaching and education?
Well, I was with a Native American friend last week, and he said, the best teachers are the ones who hated school. And I can definitely raise my hand and say, school was not my preferred place to be. In fact, I flunked the whole ninth grade due to lack of interest. They said it was laziness, but I think it was just really a lack of interest in an education that was just completely irrelevant to me and uninteresting kind of thing. So I had never thought I was going to be a teacher, but my father was a disabled veteran, and when I was 21 years old, he got upgraded, and I had an opportunity to go to college and collect $341, and that's the only reason I started college, was to collect his GI Bill benefits. And then they said, well, you have to study something while you're here. And I said, well, that's not why I'm here. They said, well, you still got to figure out what do you want to do. And the only thing I really wanted to learn was the language of my grandfather, who was pure Hawaiian and who was a native speaker, um, because he was the last generation of native speakers. My father's generation already, they knew a few words. We're a musical family, so we know a lot of songs, but nobody in my father's generation really learned how to speak Hawaiian anymore. My mother is pure German, so we grew up in a multilingual environment, and I knew I could never go to Germany and say I'm German if I didn't know how to speak German. Yet we were all supposed to be Hawaiians, and none of us could speak our language. So I said, well, since I'm here, I might as well study Hawaiian. So I started Hawaiian and then moved from a community college to the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And the only place that they could really think I would fit in was the Department of Education. So I ended up in there. Again, not a plan at all. It just happened that way. And so I became one of the first licensed teachers in secondary Hawaiian language. And when the first day I stepped into the classroom, I already realized that whatever I learned at the College of Education didn't prepare me to work with my students who were primarily Native Hawaiian, because that's the only people that would be even remotely interested in learning how to speak Hawaiian. By that time, slowly a Hawaiian Renaissance was happening, and there was definitely a little bit more interest in Hawaiian, even though it was still kind of preliminary and people really didn't think it was useful, especially when it came to getting jobs, right? Most students that were on a college track, they were all advised to take Japanese or Spanish or French. I was at a school with lots of languages, so a magnet school for languages. But the people who were put into Hawaiian, those were just the ones that didn't find anything better for them to go into. It was lots of special education students, anybody who wanted to have an easy class, because everybody knew that Hawaiian language class would not be rigorous compared to Japanese class or French class, which would automatically, obviously be rigorous kind of thing, and of course that's not how it was. We our students did some fabulous things and competed throughout the state, and won language competitions and things like that. So it was really an eye opener into the whole concept of Western education versus Hawaiian education. And this is in the late 80s now, or 80s, early 90s, when still everything that was associated with Hawaiian education was considered remedial or less than. So we had programs, but they were always for the dropouts. They were always for the high end needing extra motivation kind of behavioral issues kind of students, or just a special education that just couldn't read and write kind of thing. Those were the kind of students that came into my class. And I noticed a huge change in them when they started to connect with who they were, their identity, and they started to feel proud about who they were. But the sad part was still they were only getting good grades in my class, and they was flunking everything else. And so we said, well, that's not a model that's going to work, right? 1A and and the rest D's and F's is not going to set them up for success. So we had started some language immersion programs in the environment in the early 90s, and then transitioned to a school within a school in 1997. I had just started my PhD in Indigenous education, where I had to qualify it as a field first. So when I started my PhD, they said, what do you want to major in? I said Indigenous education. They said there is no such field. I said, well, how do you become a field? How does it work? They said, well, you have to have somebody who has a PhD in education. I go, well, what's the problem with this logic? And I said, well, if you can qualify as a field and the dean of the university approves it, then you can study it. So I ended up going for that. And I think the message there is that whenever Western institutions tell you you can't do something, don't just accept it. Figure out a way around it and make it happen for you and for you people. And so we had started the school within the school. We called it a Hawaiian Academy. Again, the idea academy automatically meaning it's rigorous, yet the first question we were asked when we said Hawaiian Academy was if this was for the dropouts and the special motivation, the special education student. And I said, absolutely not. This is for everybody. We take those students as well, but we also take the ones that, are getting good grades, the ones that are college bound, because this is Hawaiian education, and our ancestors have set extremely high standards for us. And then from there, we transitioned into Hawaii's first culture-based charter school. This was when my own children started kindergarten and second grade, so that I could create a way of education that would work for them. That was 50% in the environment and 50% in the classroom. And Leilani, you and your husband, Hadi, were part of that. My daughter's experiment, um, and it was really an empowering journey, to realized that quality Hawaiian education was not just culturally driven, family oriented, community based, but also academically rigorous, and that we could compete in any subject area with others. And within a very short time, we were actually outperforming definitely our public schools and our Native Hawaiians within the public schools, but not just Native Hawaiians, everybody, and up to par with some of the private schools as well. So that's kind of in a nutshell, it's a long story, but I tried to condense it as much as possible. So then we created this 0 to 5 K-12 model of a Hawaiian focused education paradigm. And so now what I'm working on is the post-secondary part. And so we have created EA, which stands for Education with Aloha, which is the pedagogy that evolved over these last decades. Ecoversity, which is a university where everybody has to learn how to learn about ecology, what we call aloha or malama aina, love and taking care of the land, the environment. And so these ecoversities are around the world. We have over 150 programs in 40 countries, and all of them are realizing that if this next generation doesn't learn how to take care of the earth, then there won't be anything left. And our ancestors were always extremely, extremely cognizant and active, right, in taking care of the land. All indigenous peoples, were really the best land stewards, right? They took care of the land. That has been our way of life for very long, and I think it'll also be the answer to all these ecological problems that we're currently facing.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. For some students thinking about a career in education, your long-standing career path might feel really intimidating now that you've done all this work, but I just love hearing the small stories that led to your path and that have opened up all these opportunities, and you just leaning into your instincts, right? That our cultures and languages are brilliant and rigorous. They're not outdated, right? They're not remedial. They're not historic and antiquated. They're the future. And you're reminding us of that. And you answered some of this, but is there anything you want to add about how your Native Hawaiian identity and culture and values inform your practice as an educator?
Yes, I think it's really, really important that all of us as indigenous people realize this power and this empowerment that comes with being connected to your culture, to your language, to your ceremonies and traditions, to the proverbs of your ancestors, the songs or the chants, the cycles of nature. The more you learn about your people, and in this case, it can be multiple. Many of us have multiple ethnicities, in some cases, multiple tribes, multiple cultural backgrounds. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can definitely be an and. But I know for myself, the more that I continue to learn, because that's the part, it didn't just start in 1981 and then it finished in 1985 or whatever it was, it's an ongoing journey. It's an ongoing exploration and just getting deeper and deeper into this incredible wisdom of our ancestors. We have a proverb that says, "Lehu lehu a mano mano ka ikena a ka Hawaii." Great and numerous is the knowledge of the Hawaiians. For so many centuries, we were told that we had nothing to offer. That everything that we needed to know to move forward was not anything that was passed down to us from our ancestors. But our ancestors were extremely clear of their knowledge and that it was brilliant, just like you said. And so what I find is that for myself, as a person, that grew up during a time when many Hawaiians were ashamed to be Hawaiian. That was the reality in the 60s. People felt like there was nothing valuable in terms of moving forward, as modern global citizens, or however you wanted to put it. That I feel stronger and better prepared to help people to find it for themselves, right? So I think that's the wonderful part. As I'm learning more, I can share more. And I think the most empowering thing that we can, as Native educators, can give to our Native students is to reconnect them with their language and their culture and their history and their traditional ways of life. And that self-efficacy, that grows instantly when you start this reconnection is really what they need in order to move forward and to be successful in multiple worlds.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. And you touched on this a little bit. Our program is designed to prepare and to inspire and then prepare Indigenous students to become Indigenous educators. And you spoke a little bit about the importance of this, but can you add anything on why you think it's important for Indigenous people to enter the teaching or profession or the field of education?
Yes, here in Hawaii, and I know it's the same on many reservations on the continent, when the students the native students come into the classroom, they don't see themselves up front, right? They see somebody else up front that talks different, that thinks different. Not that they're not well-meaning, not that they're not, have good intentions, not that they're not well qualified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but they're not us, right? They, there is a difference there, and that difference just really inhibits us to function in the way that we would prefer to function. There's research that says, that indigenous and in generally minorities and marginalized students as well, that the expectations of mainstream students, of mainstream teachers are less. So already from the moment we step in, as a native student, less is expected of us, right? And that's already wrong, right? We need to always set the highest expectations of our students because our students are brilliant, right? There's nothing wrong with our students. People always try to blame us, our students, our children, our young people, that we're the problem. We're not we're the evidence, right? But we're not the crime. We are not, our students are not the crime. They're evidence of a system that doesn't work for them. And so by bringing our own people into the classroom, right, that they can relate to, because the relations is really the most important part. If we can build relations between students and teachers, between teachers and families, and the whole environment and the community, then already, to me, education is not going to work. Our pedagogy of Aloha says, first we have to build familial, amicable, caring relations, right? And that can happen best when the teacher can identify with their students in terms of, where they live, what they eat, how they think, what are the things that they do during non-school time, etc. And then, we have to present curriculum that is relevant. Again, if you're a native teacher in your native community, you know what's relevant for your students. You know what's happening in the community, and you can integrate that into your classroom. For us, everything starts in our native community, all subject areas, all content, and then we go out in concentric circles, to the end of the world if we want to. But it all starts at home. And so then we have this relevance, right? So relations, relevance, and then we talk about responsibility. For us, it's not about learning for learning's sake, right? It's about learning how to do something with that knowledge and change your community, family, your community, your nation for the better. That's a part that's completely factored out of the Western system. And as long as the non-indigenous teachers, as long as they meet all the check all their boxes, they're all good, right? But that's not what it's about. It's about really making change and impacting that change. And the students need to be part of that. And so by having teachers that understand their realities, they're automatically going to focus on this concept of responsibility as well. And then we're going to end up with rigor, whether it's traditional rigor or if it's contemporary rigor, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a rigorous education. And most importantly, if we do it right, it also should be fun. And I think native humor, all of us who come from native peoples, we know how much our uncles and aunties, how funny they are, how witty they are. And I think that's also a part that our students respond to, right? They love it when we cracking jokes. That was actually our biggest criticism, I have to say, when we were a school within a school. One of my colleagues told me, well, your kids aren't really learning that much. And I said, why would you say that? And they said, well, every time we walk by your classroom, everybody's laughing. That was our problem. We were laughing too much. And from an indigenous perspective, that is so ridiculous, right? Because we want to laugh, we want to crack jokes. And I think that's also something that happens organically when you have a native teacher with native students.
Oh, yes, schools should be fun.
Yeah,
Learning should be fun, right? It has always been that way.
right.
Um, yeah, so just a last question. What are some encouraging words you have for Indigenous students who are considering or entering the teaching profession?
I would say go for it. You never know until you try. And the idea is if you get foundations, because going into education, I think you're automatically also going to have to learn more about who you are and your language and your culture and your traditions, etc. And that is going to help you. That's going to help your family. That's going to help your children and grandchildren down the road. That's going to help your nation. So I think just from that perspective, going into that field will open up so many other fields to you. So and then it is something that you have to be passionate about. I think everything as far as becoming a good teacher can be taught. The part that cannot be taught is that empathy, what we call aloha, that love and caring for the students, for anybody really, but definitely for your students. And so if you are a person who really cares, then I would say this is the best job as far as getting up in the morning and feeling good about yourself. And so many years after, I have students, I had them like 36 years ago or something, and when I meet them now on social media, or wherever, or I had their grandmother in high school or whatever, it's like you become part of a bigger family, and I think that's always a wonderful thing also, is to grow your relations. So if you have love for children, for young people, if you have love for your culture, for your language, for your traditions, if you have love for your people and you want to advance, it's not just about perpetuating, staying in the same spot, right? But it's really advancing your ancestral knowledge. Then becoming a teacher is a perfect place, because as you're teaching, you're also learning, right? In Hawaiian, we have only one word for teaching and learning, a'o, and it depends on the directional. So a'o aku, which is away from the speaker, is teaching. A'o mai, towards the speaker, is learning. So there is this reciprocity, and you will definitely be a lifelong learner. They talk a lot about lifelong learning, but it's not really a practice, right? But when you're a teacher, guarantee you're going to become a lifelong learner, because you have to, right? And it's fun, it's exciting. There are challenges, I'm not saying there aren't, but I think the benefits far outweigh the challenges.
It is such a rewarding profession, and I love that love and learning really characterize your model of education. Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for spending time with us and sharing your thoughts. And I know you're going to inspire the next generation of Indigenous educators. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Leilani. Aloha.